afternoon, everyone. By the time I get done saying a few words, it's going to be 2:00, which is our predetermined time to start this meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Clock actually is within a second or two of 2 p.m. We are here in the presence of our Secretary Treasurer, Jennifer Current, and we do have full complement of our committee members. Officially and for the tape, I will say I am experiencing some difficulty with my left eye. So forgive me if I don't catch you in the audience adequately. I've got a couple of other people in the room that's going to help me with that. First item of business is our land acknowledgement statement. The Township of Hamilton is situated within the traditional territory of the Mississauga, Anishinaabe, and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. Our work on these lands respectfully acknowledges their resilience and their long-lasting contributions to the area now known as the Township of Hamilton. I will turn to Jennifer and ask her to go through our explanation of process of the hearing for today. Jennifer.
Certainly, through you, Chairman Jib. This is the Committee of Adjustment. We'll be hearing 3 applications, all for minor variances. The applications will be announced and reviewed in the order that they appear on the agenda. I will give an overview of each application. After I give my overview, the meeting will be opened up to the public for comments and questions. We request that you provide, if anybody wants to ask a question or provide a comment, that they provide their name and address for the record. We'll first hear from those in support of an application, followed by those in opposition of the application, and then those seeking clarification, and finally the applicant. All questions must be addressed through the chairperson. If you'd like to receive a copy of the notice of decision for the application, please sign the sheet in the hallway, the lobby out there. And if you can make a note of which application you want to receive a copy of the notice of decision for.
Our next item is the confirmation of our agenda. The prepared motion is that the agenda for the Committee of Adjustment meeting held on September 9th, 2025 be approved. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Larry, second by Mark. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the declaration of pecuniary interest. Is there anything to be declared by our committee members today? Seeing none, that will be recorded. Item 6, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Prepared motion is under 6.1 that the minutes of the Committee of Adjustment meeting held on July 8th, 2025 be approved. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by John, seconded by Bruce. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. There is no business arising from those minutes. So we'll move on to item 8, which is new business. And our first application is for a minor variance, 2025-24. And it's at 5301 County Road 45 in Part Lot 5, Concession 3. And Jennifer, if you would please proceed with your planning report.
Certainly, through you, Chairman Jib. This is a minor variance application submitted by Ashley Keith and Muhammad Al-Abadi. They have an agent acting on behalf of the applicants. The application is for a minor variance to permit the construction of a garage and additional residential unit to be attached to the existing dwelling unit located at 5301 County Road 45. The three variances they are requesting are an increased height of 8.03 meters instead of the normally required permitted 5.5 meters, a variance to permit an increased maximum size of an additional residential unit to 155.43 square meters instead of the normally permitted 98 square meters, and a variance to section 9.3.3B permitting an interior side yard east of 1.34 meters instead of the normally required 3 meters. So the subject property is located on the east side of County Road 45, north of Baltimore. A key map I provided for you in the report. The property is developed with a single detached dwelling and 2 sheds. It's partially cleared with mature trees along the front and rear of the property. Surrounding land uses are residential to the west, southwest, and northwest. And there's a large agricultural and property to the south and southeast and north. The lands immediately adjacent to the subject property to the south is a large agricultural property, and the northern portion of which abuts this property is heavily forested. The adjacent property to the south and east of the subject property extends both from County Road 45 in the north to Community Center Road in the south. So the property is located in the agricultural area of the municipality. Under the provincial planning statement, residential development on existing lots of record are permitted in the agricultural designation. The provincial planning statement also permits additional residential units. There are no natural heritage features or natural hazard features on the subject property that would require protection under the provincial planning statement. MDS, we did look at MDS, minimum distance separation guidelines, which we are required to do for new residential uses. There was an unoccupied livestock barn identified at 5357 County Road 45, but an MDS calculation was not prepared for that because there's already a residential dwelling on the subject property. The proposed variance is consistent with the provincial planning statement, which permits residential development in the agricultural area and additional residential uses. The property is not located on the Oak Ridges Moraine, so the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan doesn't apply. The Northumberland County official plan and the township official plan both place this property, as I mentioned, in the agricultural area, which permits residential development on existing lots of record and additional residential units. The official plan also contains the 4 tests that you have to use in evaluating a minor variance. The variance must be minor, it must be desirable and appropriate for the development of land, must maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, and must maintain the general intent of the official plan. So as I mentioned, the applicant is applying for 3 variances, 1 variance to permit an increased height, 1 to permit a reduced interior side yard setback, and the 3rd to permit a larger additional residential unit than is normally permitted. The height variance is required because the proposed additional residential unit will be constructed as a 2nd story on a new garage addition to the building, to the structure, and section 5.2.5.2 of our zoning bylaw limits the height of an additional residential unit to 5.5 meters. So we need to have a higher permitted height for it. There are no buildings or structures on the adjacent property that will be impacted by the proposed new structure, and all buildings and structures on the adjacent property, that's the property that extends from County Road 45 down to Community Center Road. That's the property that would be most impacted by these proposed variances. All structures on that property are clustered down on the southern portion of the property, well away from the subject property. The lands immediately adjacent to this proposed structure are heavily forested, and there are no buildings or structures that would be impacted by the increased height or the decreased interior side setback. Now, they have also applied for a variance to permit a larger additional residential unit in a detached structure. Sorry, that should be attached structure. They've applied for 155.43 meters squared instead of the normally permitted 98 meters squared. However, in this case, the actual living area of the additional residential unit is 123 meters squared. That's the area of the apartment above the garage. They have included 32 square meters that encompasses a stairway and access from the garage up to the additional residential unit as part of the area of the additional residential unit. So that's what brings it to 155. The actual living space is 123 square meters. So while it is larger, it's not as large as it would seem when you add in the stairway access. So when you're considering whether or not a minor variance is desirable or appropriate, you look at the impact of the variance. In this case, the proposed variance will facilitate the construction of the additional residential unit on this developed property, and there are no abutting lands that will be next to the addition that will be impacted by the proposed development. So the impact on surrounding land uses is minimal. So the subject property is zoned rural residential in the township's bylaw, which permits a single detached dwelling on a lot with a minimum lot area of 0.4 hectares and 45 meters of frontage. The subject property is 0.41 hectares and has 37.1 meters of frontage on County Road 45. It's considered an existing undersized lot, which is permitted in the zoning bylaw. And as I mentioned, they're requesting a 1.34 meter setback from the interior eastern lot line where the bylaw requires 3 meters. They're asking for an increased lot area, or excuse me, building area of 155.43 and an increased height. So we're here because they don't comply with those 3 sections in our zoning bylaw. But the variance maintains the intent of the zoning bylaws, which permits a residential unit and an additional residential unit on the property. So the application was circulated to a number of agencies, and I received responses from the Conservation Authority that commented that the subject property is not within a GRCA regulated area. And on that basis, they had no objection to the proposed variance. Northumberland County commented that they have no objection to the proposed variance, provided the following conditions are included in the decision: that the applicant applies for an entrance permit from the County of Northumberland's Public Works Department to upgrade the entrance to comply with current standards. All costs associated with this permit will be at the applicant's expense. 2, that the applicant applies for a setback permit from the County of Northumberland's Public Works Department prior to any construction on the property. All costs associated with the permit will be at the applicant's expense, and that the applicant submits a covering letter which outlines how each county condition was addressed and provide all required fees in accordance with the County of Northumberland fees and charges bylaw. Hamilton Township Building had no objection, Fire had no objection, Public Works had no objection. Notice of the application was circulated to all landowners within 60 meters of the property on August 26th, and a sign was posted on August 23rd. No public comments have been received to date. So the recommendation is that the variances be granted, and the reasons for the variance granting are contained on page 6 of the bylaw, in which we review the 4 tests of the minor variance. 1, the variance is minor as there will be no impact on adjacent property. 2, the variance is desirable and appropriate for the development of the land. The property is zoned rural residential, which permits a residential and additional residential uses. The intent of the township's official plan has been maintained. The property is an existing lot of record which permits residential uses in agricultural areas, and the general intent of the Hamilton Township zoning bylaw has also been maintained. So the recommendation is that the application be approved. Now, there's also the consideration as to whether or not you want to include the county conditions, which are pretty innocuous, really. An entrance permit to upgrade the existing entrance, and the setback permit for the county public works, which are usually done at the building permit stage anyways.
Thank you, Jennifer. Jennifer, I do not know our applicants. or our agent on this application. Could you tell me if they're here with us today?
Our agent is here today.
Okay. As we go to the audience for comments, I can tell our agent on this application that we will come back to you at the end of our process and provide you an opportunity to speak if you so wish. Turning to the audience, is there anyone other than the applicants or agent here in support of this application? Is there anyone here in opposition to this application? Is there anyone here seeking clarification on this application? Seeing none to those three questions, I'll go to our agent. Would you like to speak to this application, or would you like me to go to the committee members and see if we generate any questions? And then you can provide an opportunity. We will provide you an opportunity to speak to the committee questions, if in fact there are any.
Whichever way you'd like to go. I've got nothing to add further than to be here for any questions.
Maybe we'll go to committee members. Committee members, comments or questions? Mark?
I just have a question, and it deals with the county recommendations that they put forward. What is the second request that they're asking? Because I'm not familiar with it. Is it, you say it's a setback application they're asking for?
Yes, they have the Northumberland County has a setback permit requirement for development that is adjacent to a county road. And their development is supposed to be circulated to the county Public Works Department, and they issue a permit. I believe it's a permit that they issue prior to a building permit being issued. I believe the reason they may be asking for it as a condition of the minor variance is that it's a policy of Northumberland County, and it's not adopted by a bylaw or included in any form, like it's not in the township's bylaw. So our building official is here, but I'll speak and he can tell me if I'm wrong. I believe that when somebody submits a building permit application, it's not applicable law that they apply for a setback permit because it's only a policy. And they want to make sure that they apply for the setback permit. So by making it a condition of the minor variance, it becomes applicable law.
Can I just further ask, what's the purpose of this? Because I'm really lost to what this is. I mean, this is the first I've heard of one of these.
Maybe I'll interject a little bit. First of all, for clarity, it is the physical linear distance from the closest part of the structure to the center line of the road. And I will then turn it over to our chief building official. Tim, do you want to answer the other part of that question, please? You want my parrot, Tim?
We're good, yeah. And patch. Main reason would be to review and talk with the applicant for potential damages to the road. So at bigger projects, they often want to have that contact, but anything adjacent to a county road, they're just making sure that it would work for any future development of the road and potential damage of the road for bigger projects. Thanks.
And I can quickly add, it's been in place, a practice and a policy of the county for 35 years.
I've just never seen it come forward on an application to be for that. Thanks for the clarity, though.
Other committee members, question, John?
Just to clarify, Tim's explanations is also the culvert and the driveway that leads up 45.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from committee members? Any comments? The motion is to approve, outlining the three conditional components from the county. So I would ask committee members for a motion, please. John, please.
Okay, I'll approve this on conditions from Northumberland, and it meets the four tests. It also meets the intent of the provincial statement, the county of Northumberland, and the township plans and the township zoning bylaw.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder to that motion? Moved by John, seconded by Mark. Any follow-up questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you.
She's.
Okay, our next application is the Cole application on Morton Road. And our applicants are Larry and Joyce Cole. And unless they have an agent, I can say that they're not in the audience with us. Jennifer, your planning report, please.
Through you, Chairman Jib. This is a minor variance application for a property located at 4046 Morton Road in part of Lot 27, Concession 6. And the purpose of the application is to permit a decreased front setback of 13 meters instead of the normally 20 meters that's required by the zoning bylaw. And it is being requested to permit the construction of a covered front porch on the house. Now, the existing dwelling is the property, it's a rural residential lot located in an agricultural area. It was, I believe the lot was created as a farm retirement lot a number of years ago. And the existing dwelling is set back 16 meters from the front lot line. So it's not possible for them to, the existing structure doesn't comply with the current setback. So they can't add a porch onto it and comply. So they've requested a minor variance to permit a covered porch, which will extend into the existing deficient front setback. They provided a sketch with their application. It's attachment A. It's a pretty modest porch that's being added onto the front. It's covered porch. It's not going to extend extensively into the required front yard. The front setback they're requesting is 13 meters. They're actually requesting, the front porch will have a setback of 13.87 meters, I believe. I've rounded it down to 13 meters to give them some flexibility if they need it when they're doing their construction. So the 0.36 hectare subject property is located on the west side of Morton Road in north of Vimy Ridge. It's sort of in the northwest quadrant of the municipality. The property is developed with a single detached dwelling and a detached garage or shed. Surrounding land uses are large, actively farmed agricultural properties. The subject property was created as a farm retirement lot from the surrounding farm property, which is a cash crop farm, and they have some mixed livestock. I believe they have some sheep, some cattle, some horses, and some chickens on it, but it's predominantly cash cropped. The property is located in an agricultural area. The PPS, the provincial planning statement, permits residential uses on existing lots of record in the agricultural area. They need to comply with the minimum distance separation calculations. However, no new residential use is being created, so an MDS calculation was not prepared for this. The property is not located on the Oak Ridges Moraine and is not subject to the policies of the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. The county official plan and the township official plan both permit residential uses, and the proposed minor porch addition would be permitted under both of those planning documents. The variance, the official plan contains the 4 tests for minor variance. As I mentioned, it must be minor, it must be desirable and appropriate for the development of the land, must maintain the general intent of the zoning bylaw and the general intent and purpose of the official plan. Now, the applicant is applying to permit a 13-meter setback instead of the normally 20-meter setback. The existing dwelling is only 16.16 meters from the center line or from the front lot line, so it's impossible to meet the requirement. In considering whether a minor variance is desirable or appropriate, the focus is on the impact of the variance. In this case, the proposed variance will facilitate the construction of a covered porch on an existing dwelling, and there are no dwellings or other structures immediately adjacent to the subject property that would have the potential to be impacted by this reduced front setback. So the requested variance is minor. Now, the township's zoning bylaw does contain a provision that would allow for the encroachment of a uncovered porch or deck into a required yard. However, in this case, because it's a covered porch, it doesn't go with that exemption. It's not permitted. So that's why they're applying for the variance. Okay, so the zoning bylaw permits a single detached dwelling as well as the proposed addition, provided a minor variance is granted for it. The application was circulated to a number of agencies. There were no objections to the proposed variance. The application is not, there are no natural hazard areas or natural heritage features on the subject property, so there were no objections. Now, in determining whether or not a minor variance is appropriate, we have to go through the 4 tests, and the 4 tests are outlined in the report. The variance is minor as there will be no impact on adjacent properties. There are no buildings or structures on the lands immediately surrounding the subject property. The closest dwelling is approximately 110 meters north of the subject property, and the second closest dwelling is approximately 293 meters west of the subject property. The proposed reduced front setback, which will facilitate the construction of the covered porch on the east side of the existing dwelling, will have no impact on the adjacent properties. The residential variance is desirable and appropriate for the land. The property is zoned rural residential, which permits a single detached dwelling, and the proposed porch addition would be permitted. The Hamilton Township Public Works Department, who the municipality owns Morton Road, but they maintain Morton Road, have no objections to the reduced front setback, and so there should be no impact on the function of that road. The general intent of the township's official plan has been maintained. The official plan permits residential development on existing lots of record. And as mentioned, the general intent of the township of Hamilton zoning bylaw has maintained because residential uses are permitted on the property. So the recommendation is that the application be approved for a reduced front setback that will facilitate the construction of a covered front porch on this property.
Thank you, Jennifer. I know our applicants aren't here. There's no agent on this application. Okay, moving to the audience. Is there anyone here other than the owners? I guess I can't even really say it that way. Is there anyone here in support of this application? Is there anyone here in opposition to this application? Is there anyone here wishing or seeking clarification on this application? Seeing none, I'll turn to committee members. Do we have any questions on this application? Okay, the motion reads for approval. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Larry, second by Bruce. All those in favor? Carried. Jennifer, would you need reasons by the mover on this application?
Are they the reasons that are outlined in the planning report?
As described in the report.
Okay.
In fact, there was no comments for or against the variance.
Perfect. Thank you.
Our next application is for a property on Dale Road. Located at 8691 Dale Road, Part Lot 15, Concession 2, in the McFadden name. Application number A09-25. Jennifer, when you're available, please, planning report.
Through you, Chairman Jib. This is a minor variance application submitted by Luke McFadden for 8691 Dale Road, located in part of Lot 15, Concession 2. The purpose of the application is to permit a variance to Section 9.3.2A, which is the front setback requirement, to permit a decreased front setback of 14 meters instead of the normally required 20 meters to facilitate the construction of an addition to an existing single detached dwelling. The addition will consist of a garage and a attached garage and porch, as well as a bump out to the existing residential unit. The 0.16 hectare subject property is located on the south side of Dale Road, west of Division Street, in the southeast area of the municipality. The property is developed with a single detached dwelling, and there is a circular driveway on the property that is shared with both neighboring properties. So there's a circular driveway, and 3 properties use that driveway. Surrounding land uses are predominantly rural residential properties fronting on Dale Road, which is County Road 74. And there's a large forested rural property immediately south of the subject property. The property is located in a rural area in the township, and the provincial planning statement contains policies which permit residential development in the rural area. Actually, lot creation is also permitted in the rural area. So the provincial policy statement does allow for residential development on the property. There's no designated natural heritage or natural hazard features requiring protection under the policies of the PPS. Compliance with the minimum distance separation guidelines is required by the PPS. However, in this case, the property is already developed with a single detached dwelling and no additional residential uses are being proposed. And while there is a small livestock facility that was located at 8738, which is North Dale Road, which is northeast of the subject property, an MDS calculation was not prepared because the property is already developed and there are 12 residential dwellings between the subject property and that livestock barn. So the proposed variance is consistent with the policies contained in the provincial planning statement. The property is not located on the Oak Ridges Moraine, so the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan doesn't apply. The Northumberland County and Township official plans place these lands in a rural designation, which permits residential uses. The township's official plan requires that applications for variance address the 4 tests for a minor variance. The variance must be minor. The variance must be desirable and appropriate for the development and use of the land. The variance must maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, and it must maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The applicant is applying for a variance to section 9.3.2A of the township's zoning bylaw to permit a reduced front setback of 12 meters instead of the normally required 20 meters setback. Now, the variance is required in the applicant can't create the garage in the rear part of the property because it's a pretty narrow property and they need to access it by the driveway, which is the reason that the variance is required. So there aren't other options in this case. In considering whether a variance is minor or desirable, the focus, as I mentioned, is on the impact of the variance. In this case, the proposed variance will facilitate the construction of garage and living space addition on an existing dwelling. Both of the neighboring properties are developed with single detached dwellings. The property to the east of the subject property is located closer to Dale Road than the dwelling on the subject property. And it will not be significantly closer to the proposed than the existing dwelling, and will not be significantly closer due to the angle of the homes on the proposed lot, the proposed addition, and it shouldn't result in any disruption of views from this home. So given the angle of the homes and the addition on this dwelling, there should be minimal impact on the adjacent property to the east. The property on the west side of the subject property is set back further from Dale Road than the subject property. However, the garage portion of that dwelling will be located next to the garage portion, the proposed garage door portion on the subject property. So you would have garage abutting garage. You wouldn't have a new garage abutting the more living space component of their property. Now, on both of the neighboring properties, both of the dwellings on the subject property and the neighboring properties have pretty significant interior side setbacks. Now, the property to the west will have an interior side setback of 6 meters, meaning they each have 6 meters. So there's an interior side setback for the subject property of 6 meters, and that's on the western side of the property. And on the eastern side of the next dwelling, the dwelling to the west has a 6 meter setback, which means that the two structures are actually 12 meters apart. So 6 meters on each property. And so given the relatively large separation distance between the two structures and the fact that the garages will abut each other, the proposed addition should have minimal impact on the adjacent property to the west. So the property is zoned rural residential on Schedule A to the Township zoning bylaw. As I mentioned earlier, the minimum lot area for a rural residential property is 0.4 hectares and the minimum lot frontage requirement is 45 meters. This is an existing undersized lot with an area of 0.16 hectares and 22.85 meters of frontage on Dale Road. It's similarly sized to some other lots on Dale Road, which are older lots created before the current standards. So section 9.3.2A of the township bylaw requires a 20-meter setback. The existing dwelling is located 21.49 meters from Dale Road. However, there's not sufficient room to accommodate the proposed garage within that 1.49 meters that would be allowed under the existing standards, the existing regulations. So they've requested the minor variance to reduce that setback to 14 meters. As prior to the submission of this application, the applicant was requested to consult with Northumberland County because Northumberland County has setback requirements from the county road to ensure that buildings and structures are set back far enough away from the center line of a county road. That consultation took place and Northumberland County agreed to a reduction of their requirement. I believe they normally require 30-meter setback from the center line of the county road, and they have agreed to a 27-meter setback from the center line of the road. So 3 meters. So that would facilitate the proposed construction. So they don't require as a significant variance to that setback as they do to the township's setback. And we wanted that to take place before the application was submitted, because if they wouldn't agree to a reduction in the setback from the county road, then the minor variance wouldn't, even if it was granted, they wouldn't support it. So the application was circulated to a number of agencies. The only comment was from Northumberland County Public Works, who commented that they're willing to grant an exception to the entrance and setback policy and allow a setback distance of 27 meters from the painted center line of Dale Road to the start of new structures on the proposed subject property. Notice of the application was circulated to all registered landowners within 60 meters of the property on August 26, 2025, and a sign was posted on the property on August 22nd. To date, no public comments have been received. So the requested variance will facilitate the construction of an addition to the existing single detached dwelling, which is an addition to the house, an attached garage, and a porch. In reviewing the application, the 4 tests of a minor variance have been considered. And regarding the test for minor, The minor variance, the variance is minor as there will be minimal impact on adjacent properties. Both the neighboring properties are developed with single detached dwellings. The property to the east is set closer to Dale Road than the dwelling on the subject property. And while the proposed addition will be closer to Dale Road than that dwelling, it will not be significantly closer. And due to the angle of the homes, the proposed addition will not result in any disruptions to the views from that home. The property on the west side of the subject property is set back further from Dale Road than the subject dwelling. However, the attached garage on the neighboring property will be next to the proposed garage addition on the subject property. Both the dwelling on the subject property and the adjacent dwelling to the west have interior side yards of over 6 meters, meaning that the two dwellings are over 12 meters apart. I measured it on my GIS. It looked like they were going to be about 13.4 meters apart. Given the relatively large separation between the two structures and the fact that the garages will abut each other, the proposed addition should have minimal impact on the adjacent property to the west. The variance is desirable and appropriate for the land. The property is zoned rural residential, which permits a single detached dwelling and accessory uses. Northumberland County has agreed to a 27-meter setback from the center line of Dale Road instead of the standard 30-meter setback. So residential development is anticipated on this property and in fact exists. The general intent of the Township of Hamilton official plan has been maintained. The official plan permits residential development. And the general intent of the Hamilton Township zoning bylaw has been maintained. The requested variance is minor and it will facilitate an addition to an existing residential dwelling on the property. So the recommendation is that the application be approved.
Thank you, Jennifer. I presume there is no agent, but Mr. McFadden may very well be in the audience with us.
He is here.
Thank you. Turning to our audience, in particular our applicant, we will come back to you and you'll have an opportunity to speak if there's any questions or provide comments. Turning to the balance of the audience, is there anyone here in support of this application? Is there anyone here seeking clarification on this application? Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Seeing none to those questions, I will turn to our committee members. Do we have any questions or comments of staff or our applicant? Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Could I have someone move and second this, please? Mark, moving. Seconder, John? All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Mark, if you could help us with the
Sure.
reasons behind your motion.
I
please.
think most of the reasons were outlined within the report that Jennifer's given us, and that there was no one opposed to the application in the audience today.
Thank you. John, nothing to add? Great, thank you. Okay, so moving on. We have no new business. We have no other business that anyone shared with me. So moving on to adjournment. Wow. Jennifer, help me there.
2:43.
Okay. Committee of Adjustment, prepared motion is that the Committee of Adjustment meeting held on September 9th, 2025 be adjourned at 2:43. Mover and the seconder, John, Bruce. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you all.